Over the last few weeks, there have been numerous conversations around the fellowship over email, in covenant groups, and in small gatherings about vulnerability as an aspect of human life. There's so many layers to this topic that emerge in the midst of our shared life. So I thought that we might, to some degree, broaden and expand our understanding of our personal need for human connection and how this congregation might help us address our vulnerability and our need to open our hearts to life. Of course, each of us has our own concept of what triggers a sense of vulnerability. For many of us, just the word vulnerability can cause anxiety. Our variety of definitions and our comfort level varies depending on our background, family system, gender, class, age, and race. One person this week suggested that perhaps for UUs, a better title might be something like Taking Chances and Open-Mindedness, which is certainly a powerful, straightforward way of honoring the reality that life needs to be about engaging with others from a place of self-confidence and respect. Of course, we're not always at that place in our lives. Another person offered the thought that when hearing someone say, "I feel vulnerable," the following possibilities come to mind. Vulnerable is when a person is confronted with uncertainty, perhaps without a source of guidance, or the person feels unable to control or influence matters of importance, or perhaps has a sense of dread concerning events or circumstances to come. We know that our feelings of vulnerability seem to be intensified by loneliness. This person suggested that left to ourselves, we can fret many things into intense feelings. I can resonate with that. I tend to do melodrama in my mind very well. As Unitarian Universalists who tend many times to stay in our intellect, this seems like a definite possibility. This member was reminded of Ambrose Bierce's definition of alone. Alone, an adjective, meaning in bad company. The cure for aloneness often comes through sharing the human condition as a means to diffuse and focus and relieve intense feelings. Once caught in that aloneness, we must find a strategy of some sort that can intentionally be employed to help us escape the trap of imposed loneliness. So our being human often entails the experience of feeling alone in a state of vulnerability. This challenges our sense of how the world is supposed to work. We strive to control a life that is in control. Too often, in spite of our best laid plans, we find ourselves feeling vulnerable when our plans fall to ruin, we get hurt, we age, we lose a job, or our physical or mental capabilities change. When one or more of these events enter our lives, we get caught in the messy aspects of life that push us to the fragile edges of vulnerability. How we cope with those changes reflects our resilience and capacity for dealing with vulnerability. I do hope that we will all take the time to watch Brene Brown's 22-minute TED Talk on vulnerability, and the website is printed in our bulletin. Brown addresses the way in which our human need to connect with one another makes it possible for us to engage creatively with our vulnerability. Our connection with others allows us to be truly seen as people of worth and dignity. Too often we hold on to old fears and shame that cause us to close off part of our lives, part of our hearts, in an effort to avoid uncomfortable emotions, thoughts, or feelings. The problem is that the human psyche always seeks balance. Even Emily, as a child, knew that there needed to be some balance of keeping the heart open and holding just enough so it's not overwhelming. When we close out pain and discomfort, then we also tend to numb out positive emotions such as happiness, joy, and wonder. This past Friday, I had lunch with a friend whose therapy practice for many years was focused on life transitions, especially aging. She is one of the women I want to be like when I grow up. She is a wonderful role model for aging well, retiring as a therapist at 85, and continuing to travel and expand her intellectual horizons. She's one of my people who sends things and says, have you read this? Have you, gotten this DVD on mind, body, spirit, quantum physics, whatever? We talked about her aging process and the importance of finding a healthy balance in life that acknowledges our frailties and celebrates our potential. At almost 91, dealing with her own vulnerability and adaptation to moving away from friends to live closer to her children, she's keenly aware of the life changes to which she must adapt, either with openness and resilience or with a sense of defeat. Of course, with every life transition, there is vulnerability. Choosing to have a family, picking a school far from home, marriage, a major illness. We could go on considering our own major life transitions that might at times have pushed our ability to cope with vulnerability and also pushed us to reconsider how we want to live. And we know that these transitions are made easier or more challenging by our approach to life and the relationships we choose for ourselves. So we have a choice. We can opt to avoid the raw places in our lives and close ourselves off by some sort of psychic bandages we create. We can stay locked in our minds with our hearts withdrawn because of our fear of getting hurt again. Or we can face the reality that we can't live life without experiencing pain. Life and love mean that we will experience hurt and loss. Life also means that when we open our hearts and minds to receive whatever comes our way, we also have the opportunity to experience joy and wonder and love. What choice do we make for ourselves? Is it not better to open our lives and allow the possibility of wonder and mystery and love to enter in, even if we might get hurt? Whatever has happened to us in the past, we are here and we are alive with wondrous possibilities before us. What happened did not negate who we are now. We have the potential to choose to stay bound in old patterns that we continue to give power over our joy and happiness, peace and contentment. Or we can choose to take our power back and break out of the memories and thoughts that bind us. We can hold on to our fear of allowing others to see where we are vulnerable and stay cooped up in our loneliness. Or we can claim that core strength and wisdom that lies beneath our fear and choose to be fully present with ourselves and others. In this way, we can honor the gifts that we have to offer the world. We can be more than we are now. How will we choose to live? Carol Keel found this wonderful quote from Brene Brown's lecture on vulnerability. Brown writes, "This is what I have found. To let ourselves be seen, deeply seen, vulnerably seen, to love with our whole hearts, even though there's no guarantee, to practice gratitude and joy in those moments of terror when we're wondering, can I love this much? Can I believe in this passionately? Can I be fierce about this? Just to be able to stop and instead of catastrophizing what might happen, to say, I'm just so grateful because to feel this vulnerable means I'm alive. And the last, which I think is probably the most important, is to believe that we're enough. Because when we work from such a place, I believe, that says, I'm enough, then we stop screaming and start listening. We're kinder and gentler to the people around us, and we're kinder and gentler to ourselves. Being here in this community is an acknowledgement that we have chosen to be vulnerable. We have chosen to be open-hearted. We've come here in part because we want to be seen, really seen for who we are. We want to be with people who see us as individuals who are enough, who honor us as we learn and grow together. Here we seek to live with our whole hearts. For this endeavor, we need to be among people who can remind us that we are enough. The author and teacher Scott Peck wrote, "There can be no vulnerability without risk. There can be no community without vulnerability. There can be no peace and ultimately no life without community." In every gathering, we take responsibility for creating a safe space for one another where we can open our minds and hearts, share our vulnerable places, trusting that in this place of worth and dignity, we are honored. May we know in the deepest places in our beings that what we bring here, whatever gifts we have, that we are enough, for each of us is of infinite worth.